if you had said to me at 25, how do you feel about surrender? I'd be like, never surrender. Never. That shit is a dirty word. No way. In being 60, being an actual grown-up living a life, I realized that to get into recovery from being a high-functioning codependent meant I had to surrender to what is. The truth about where someone is, right? What is the greatest flex when it comes to love is being in the foxhole with someone you love during a dark night of the soul and not trying to fucking fix them. Being observed, just compassionately, I'm here, I'm not making any stupid fucking suggestions that you're not gonna take. The question that we have, instead of our auto advice giving, we ask, how can I best support you?
Welcome to the School of Becoming podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Litt. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to what is going to be oh shit, there it is. Oh my God, thank you for helping me realize it conversation here on the School of Becoming. I am elated to have the most incredible, incomparable Terri Cole here with me today. Hi, Terri.
Well, hi, Tracy.
I'm so happy that you're here. For those of you that aren't aware of Terri Cole until right now, number one, you're welcome. And number two, Terri is a very, very known psychotherapist and relationship and empowerment expert. She has two phenomenal books, Boundary Boss and Too Much, which we're going to be diving into today. For 20 years, Terri has done the work with a diverse group of clients, helping them really, really understand their power and what they can do to live better, more, what I perceive to be empowered, sovereign lives of agency and independence while still being highly connected and super, super loving. She is also the host of her own show, The Terri Cole Show, which I'll make sure to link in the show notes. So yay.
Hi.
Let's dive in. Well, I'm going to ask you a question first, but we are going to dive into all things codependency, and I couldn't be more excited. I get very excited about codependency because I think everyone experiences it on the spectrum of codependency, and it is not normalized enough and not understood enough to where we can heal and take our power back from it. So I really appreciate you. Before we go there, here's my question. Take me back to little Terri, little girl, like 5, 6 years old. What were you like?
Very precocious. I was in jean shorts with no shirt and puka beads. Like I always wanted to be naked for some reason. My mother would always say, "Have you no modesty?" I was like a little kid. I would always be like, "I guess not." I was always barefoot. I was athletic. I was adventurous. I was a little empath. I was helping kids way older than me. Like I remember I was 4 and people were bullying this 7-year-old and I came in and was like, get out of here. And I was like, I walked home. I was like, I'll be your friend. I literally remember being overly invested in the feeling states of others at the age of 4. I'm the youngest of 4 sisters. So some people would be like, oh, is that hard? No, my mother adored me. My sisters adored me, literally. I was the 4th daughter, and this was during the time, I'm 60, so I was born in 64. And this was a time when you really shouldn't have too many C-sections because they cut you from end to end. And they said to my mother, you're not going to be able to carry this pregnancy to term. You should definitely abort. And she was like, no, thanks, I'm good. I was the only one that she breastfed. I was the first one to go to college in my family, the only one with a master's degree, the first one to go to Europe. Like all of these things I felt, I don't know, I think that from a very young age, I had this connection with my mother, not necessarily my father. That's my whole next book is about father wounds. But with my mother, there was someone, this person, so connected that I can remember. I was probably 2 years old, and I can remember my mother bending all the way down and being like, you don't want to wear that sweater? It's scratchy. Oh, you don't have to wear it. I'll get you something. Like, really, I learned so early on that what I thought, how I felt, and what I wanted mattered, at least to my mother, right? It didn't, not everyone else, but that really, I think, set me up to have a certain amount of core confidence in my worth or my value, which of course did not stop me from becoming a high functioning codependent, but
Right.
listen, I did it with confidence.
That's right. That's right. You were a convicted high functioning codependent.
That's
Um,
right.
I want to acknowledge your mom because that's so rare. You know, we're all here in this field in some capacity to help make it not rare, right? But to have the intuition and the knowing to go, let me kneel down, let me create some safety for her, let me make sure that she sees me see
Yep.
her. It's so vital. It's so vital. So I love her for that, for you, because we're all
Thank you.
sisters and it's important.
It changes your life though. It's like there's some, and my mother's still alive. She's 87. She'll be 88 in October. Like, and she still is the same way. And I think that what for me, that abundance of love and consideration,
Mm.
in my life, I ended up marrying a widower. I became a bonus mom to 3 teenage boys. Like, I feel like I had this abundance of love sort of just flowing out of me because I never felt the scarcity of it with her. So it really impacted who I became in the world for sure. She was probably the greatest, is probably the greatest influence in my life, I would say.
It's such a gift. Such a gift.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you to you, Mom. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
That's right, Janny Cole. Thanks for doing it.
That's right. That's right. I always love to ask that question because there's always a thread when we're little girls, like what our gifts are, what our uniqueness is, what we're really pulled towards. And then
Mm,
when we have a conversation now in the stunning work you have done and the millions of lives you've changed,
mm,
there's such a connection point, right? To
yeah.
your ability to connect and care, like deeply,
Mm,
deeply care, and how that's showing up through the way you're moving about the world, which, you
mm,
know, beautiful listener, I had the joy of meeting Terri in person for the first time. Usually you don't meet in person first, right?
mm,
We know each other from this online gorgeous space and then we meet up. But we were at Kathy's event. And as soon as we sat down on the couch next to her, I was like, oh, it just felt so familiar
mhm.
and loving and easy, which is a
Yep.
testament to you and our Jersey girlness, which we connect on,
Yes.
which just shout out to all you Jersey girls. So good. So good.
We love you.
We love you. So I'm just really excited to know you more because this is our first really alone conversation. So
Hmm.
let's dive into all things codependency. And
Let's.
beautiful listener, here's my ask. Pay attention to your body as you participate in this conversation. Pay attention to the thoughts that your mind offers you as you sit with us in this conversation. Remember that you are a conscious woman that sees every trigger as an opportunity to check out what the gift is, because there's some magic in the conversation that's about to be had. So take care of yourself. So, codependency, the most misunderstood topic, arguably.
Mhm.
Let's have you please start. What are the myths? What are we not understanding about codependency that we deserve to understand?
So many things, but we can start with, being sort of unduly influenced by the original definition, which is that you've got to be enabling an alcoholic to be a codependent. So this, Codependent No More became the seminal text, and it still is obviously a wonderful text. And Melody has updated it many times, and it doesn't just say that anymore. But what happened is codependency came out of the 12-step world, the world of addiction. It was this whole group of people all in like Milwaukee or somewhere.
Mhm.
And so it was almost always associated with someone trying to control an addict because it only women can become codependent. You can only be codependent in romantic relationships. Okay, none of those things are obviously true. um, let's see, it only occurs in relationships with addicts, which is completely untrue and so misleading.
Mhm.
um, Only emotionally weak people are codependent. You can always spot a codependent. 100% no. So those are like the top myths.
Yeah.
So why does it even matter? Well, for me, the reason why I ended up writing an entire book on this, besides the fact that you teach what you most need to learn for a fact. Okay, so we could just start there. But in my therapy practice, I attract women who are very much like me, who are kind of masters of the universe. These are highly capable, high functioning women who are building empires, women who are CFOs, women who are pop stars internationally, women who are yeah, people would look at you and be like, you are crushing it in life now. And they are, right? And we are.
Yeah.
So if I would say to them, hey, if what I noticed was like a codependent pattern in a relationship and I pointed it out, they would immediately reject the notion and be like, yeah, no, lady, you got it wrong. Because I'm not dependent on squat. Everyone's dependent on me. I'm
Mm,
making all the dough. I'm making all the moves. I'm doing all the emotional labor. I'm making sure the kids are going to camp and doing all the shit they're doing. Like, I'm
yes.
doing it all. So don't, because again, they have in their mind a codependent is like the long suffering wife sitting at home crying because the husband is a debtor and gambling away the rent money or whatever that
Yes.
old image is.
Yeah.
So here was a problem because my clients could not see themselves in the problem. So how can I help you get to a solution if you don't think the problem is yours? And I know it is. So then I was like, all right, so what is the difference? What is happening? And I realized I needed to write a book about codependency for the modern woman. And
Right.
that's what this book is, because we're not just at home having babies and doing stuff. And maybe we're doing that too, but we're doing all kinds of things. So the moment I changed the name and came up with a whole brand new definition of high functioning codependency, my clients were like, me, I'm the problem. It's me. Not to quote Taylor, but I
Right.
will. Um, and they did this without shame. They were like, you're right. I'm
Mm,
burnt out. I'm
so
tired.
interesting. Okay, wait a second. I have to, this is so like, isn't it interesting that as soon as high functioning got connected in the identification of this, the woman's ego is like, oh, okay, I'll take that,
Yep.
because high functioning still allows me to know I'm killing it.
Yep.
Whereas my previous paradigm was like, wah, sorrow, weak,
Yep.
codependent. It's just so fascinating because, we study and we teach, ego versus consciousness and love and nervousness and all this stuff. And I see the codependency all the time. I see the codependency in coaches and healers' inability to actually drive their clients' results because they're codependent there too. So just to sit on it, I find it so fascinating that
Mm.
as long as we can stroke, girl, you're still killing it,
Yep.
because we don't want to allow ourselves to realize there's opportunity for our own healing and growth, that we can be fallible, that we can be on the other side of that which I want, before I just give you back the mic, so to speak, like it's so interesting
Mhm.
because codependence means there's another part of the co connects.
Yep.
So if you're the one that is doing all the things, spinning all the plates, making all the appointments, saving the day all the time,
Hmm.
you are codependent. You're just the other part of the co.
Correct. So let's talk about definition,
Yes,
right?
please.
So, because I feel like everyone listening, or if you're watching this, we're to be on the same page. My definition of codependency
Yeah.
is when you are overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, circumstances, relationships, careers, finances, situations of the people in your life to the detriment of your own internal peace, right?
That's everyone in the world.
Of course, it's certainly all the women, that's for
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
Because here's the thing, we
Mm,
make the distinction that as lovers,
mm,
daughters, sisters, friends, mothers, citizens, of course, and empaths, many of us, and highly sensitive people,
mm.
obviously, we care about the people we love. We want our people to get what they want. This is not that. This is more than that. When you're an HFC, as we call it, high functioning codependent, you step over the line and you start to feel responsible for those things in someone else's life, which is not the same as, I really want you to have what you want, Trace. It's me being like, I need to make moves so that you get what you want. Those two things are different. So that's the definition.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we look at what are the traits, so I think maybe it would be helpful to
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about some of the traits and
Please.
behaviors.
Please.
Feeling responsible for fixing other people's problems. Anybody? Just raise your friggin' hand, of
Yeah. Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Giving till it hurts, right? Going above and beyond. A lot of times we're doing things that no one has asked us to do, but we think they need to be done. Um, Always ready to jump into damage control mode, right?
Mm,
Because keep in mind, if you're an HFC, you're highly capable. You getting into recovery, which is what Too Much, my book, is all about, I walk you through the process, just means that your amazing qualities are going to be amplified and your dysfunctional or disordered behavioral patterns are going to lessen. So the quality of your relationships will get better. So don't worry that like getting into recovery means that all of your magic is going to be gone. It means your magic is going to be potent, more potent than it is right now.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you might feel exhausted, resentful, slightly bitter, because people, they can be appreciative, but the truth is, if we're coming from a disordered place, they really cannot be grateful enough because we're coming from a place that is not correct, right? We are not respecting people's right to be sovereign. And the way that we do that is we auto advice give. Anybody? I have so many good
Mhm.
ideas for you, Tracy. I want to tell you all of them right now. Um, you may be coming in and telling me a situation. And it's like when I was an active HFC, I couldn't stop myself from being like, oh, you know what? I also think this could be great. I was indiscriminate. I could be on a plane and overhear people talking and be like, I know a great oncologist in
Right.
New York. Like, mind your own fucking business. What the hell is wrong with you? But I
Yeah.
couldn't stop because I
Yeah.
was like, but I want to help. It was like
Yeah.
hyper helping, so to speak.
Yes. Yes.
You might be overly self sacrificing. As an HFC, we are always willing to take one for the team
Mm.
because we know we're okay. We're like, it's fine. You take the massager. Oh, there's a flat tire. Just I'll Uber. You take the car. Like we're constantly problem solving on our feet in the moment because we can. So
Mm.
you have auto advice giving, but then you also have auto accommodating, where I tell a story in the book about I was at a hair salon in Manhattan on a Saturday. It was busy as hell. I don't usually go on Saturday because it's so crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have a mask on my hair and I'm laying in a sink and I'm going to be there for 20 minutes. And now I'm looking and all of a sudden there's like a line starting to build up for the sink. And every new person with their little robe on, standing in line waiting for a sink, I'm more and more and more anxious. And I'm like, I don't need to be taking up a sink. I'm not even using the sink. I should tell them I could move to a chair until it's time to take it out or what, like just, I'm literally trying to control the sink flow
Right.
at my hair salon because I'm a psycho. And I raise my hand. I say to the girl, I could move.
Mm.
She's kind of like, bitch, I think we got
Yeah.
it. We do it every
Right.
Saturday.
Yeah.
But no, she was
Yeah.
very nice. She was like, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
It's okay. If after 30 years of therapy, I'm still doing shit like this, so are other people. So this
Mhm.
can't just be me. What is the cost of doing that? Instead of resting my brain that was
Mhm.
exhausted,
Mhm.
instead of listening to a podcast or maybe calling my mom or just resting, meditating, instead, I'm jacking myself up, taking responsibility for something that is not my responsibility. So that is auto accommodating in the
Mm.
wild, right? And
Right.
again, what makes this different from the codependency from the past is that when you're an HFC, we feel like we're responsible for everything, every room that we're in. We are dialed into. Is everything okay? Is everyone okay? What should I do? Does anyone need? Should I get into that conversation because I think those two people don't like each other? Does this person need a drink? Like
Mm.
we're literally our antennas are like
Mm.
to Mars and back. So you wanted to say something about that
Yeah,
before I
yeah.
go on to the other ones? Yes.
There's so much in what you're saying. So there's a few things that are coming through. The first one is, do you consider being highly controlling and an HFC one and the same, or does control weave into this in a component of it?
That's a great question because it's interesting. When we think about codependency, any kind, old school, garden variety, high functioning, the foundation for any kind of codependency is an overt or covert bid or desire to control other people's outcomes.
Okay, so I'm asking that question because a lot of the beautiful women that come into the school are all moving into control recovery, right? Because
Mhm,
it's such a common, appropriate, adaptive behavior. And that
mhm,
was mine my whole life. And when you told the story about what you were saying, it reminded me of a
mhm,
time where I was dating my husband before we got married. And I
mhm.
was hand addressing envelopes for an annual party I threw every year, 100 envelopes by hand. And he very lovingly walked over and he said, "Hey, babe, can I help you address the envelopes?" And I took a piece of scrap paper, I slid the scrap paper across the table, and I said, "Okay, but just write an address on this slip of paper first." And he picked up the paper and he goes, "Are you asking me for a fucking writing sample right now? Like, I'm trying to help you, but you can't even let go of the thing that's going in the garbage? It's not even, it's the fucking envelope, Tracy." What? And I was like,
Yep.
oh my
Yes.
God. So I have a very intimate relationship with understanding control. So I'm curious. I was just curious how it weaves in.
Right, but Trace, what you're describing though, and it's such a good example, one thing that as HFCs we suffer from is hyperindependence. So we
Mm.
just are not great at accepting help or wanting help. Many of us suffer from perfectionism as well. And that's exactly what you're saying. You're like, here's the thing. I don't want it's easier to do it myself because if I ask you to do it, not only are you not going to do it right, probably, but you're also not going to do it in the timely fashion that I would like you to do it in. So I would just, it's so much easier to just do it myself.
Yeah.
So this hyper independence, what ends up happening, though, is that when we do it over a very long period of time, it becomes very isolating and it's like a one-way ticket to Bitterland. Like there's no other stops on that train because there's only so long, right? Because think about it. When you hear about someone saying that their mom or their grandmom is a martyr, you don't think when she was 22, she was like, I cannot wait to grow up and become a martyr, right? That's nobody's aspiration.
Yeah.
What happens though, if we remain codependent as opposed to interdependent in our relationships, we will end up being bitter, but we will end up being even more tragically, we will end up being unknown.
Mm. Mm. Just landing there evokes so much emotion.
It's so painful.
It's so painful when at the core, what we know before the things happen that drove each one of us to experience HFC-ness is the desire and deservency to be so significant. And then to know that you move through your life and then you hit this moment where you're like, oh my God, but the outcome is the direct opposite of that, the total
Yes.
shrinkage and like annihilation of my own self.
That's exactly what it is. And I can tell you that in my therapy practice of 27 years, I've seen women in their sixth, seventh, eighth decade of life coming in and being like, I've done it all. Money in the bank, kids all got MBAs, went to Ivy Leagues. I'm on, this thing, I'm on that, like where you get on all these boards.
Yeah.
I'm going to Soul Cycle 3 times a week. I kind of still like my husband. We travel. And literally they'll be like, uh, is this how I'm supposed to feel? Like, is this all there is? Why do I feel so empty? And I'm like, because you built your life checking boxes that someone else constructed, endlessly taking one for the team. It's fine. Listen, you need the thing. It's okay. Never asking for what we really needed, not really telling the truth about how we feel about things, never wanting to rock the boat, always being like, peace, peace, peace at any. I mean, there's a whole section of the book called Peace at Any Price. Oh, but the price is you. The price is your authenticity. The price is the intimacy in your relationships, right? Because when you think about these behaviors, um, and even the last two sort of on that list
Mm.
are anticipatory planning, where you know
Mhm.
you're going to be with some difficult people. We're already 15 steps ahead of being like, okay, so Uncle Bob and Uncle Jimmy are coming for Christmas. They hate each other, so I'll make sure they don't sit near each other. I'll get the booze that they both drink. I'll Instead of expecting grown people to not act like fucking idiots, we're
Mhm.
like, I'll be the puppet master to
Mhm.
make sure that everything is okay for all the people. So anticipatory planning, there's that. And then we have the overfunctioning. And what happens with overfunctioning is that, and I say this as a joke, but it's not actually a joke, that in my 20s, I could take a perfectly functional boyfriend and turn him into an underfunctioner in 2 weeks or less.
I know.
Literally.
I know exactly where you are with that so deeply. Say more for our beautiful listener.
Well, the end of the end is when you are so capable
Mm.
and you're in love and you're so thoughtful. Like I could just do everything. They'd be like, "Well, I'm gonna do." I'm like, "I already did it. Like, we're done." And I remember saying to my mom, I was living with the only other person I ever lived with was this boyfriend who I really loved, but I knew we weren't gonna make it. Anyway, um, I said to my mom, like, "This guy doesn't know how to vacuum and doesn't know how to brown garlic. He always burns it. Like, what is the deal?" And she was like, "Terry, let's start with your father never touched a vacuum or a pan. So how about just fucking let him do whatever the hell he's doing and say thank you?" And she said, Tara, if you need everything done your way, you'll end up like me, doing it all and doing it all alone."
Mm.
And I was
Mm.
like, dude, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This sparked something you said before that I had wanted to comment on, and it just came back, because beautiful listener, when you are over functioning, you are taking the other person's power and responsibility away, which is what leads to the under functioning, right? And then, of course, you build the relationships that you then resent and all those other beautiful, definite byproducts. But it's also connected to what you were saying before about when we take responsibility for how other people respond, we take responsibility for other people's outcomes. When you don't allow yourself to be sovereign, you take away other people's ability to be sovereign.
Mhm.
We think
Yep.
we're winning. We think it's a badge of honor. We think all
Mhm.
of these really limiting, misguided things. But
Yep.
in truth, everyone is being hurt. Everything and everyone is at a detriment,
Yes.
right? But we're dressing it up as HFCs as, but got
Yeah.
it. Watch me.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yes.
So it's especially for our beautiful student body that is listening, like
Mhm.
it is completely unhealthy, detrimental, and unhelpful because right now your identity might perceive it as loving, but it's the direct opposite of that. It is not loving to you, and it is not loving to the other party that you are in relationship with.
Correct. Here's the thing about the costs,
Mm.
because I think that we really have to look at what are the costs, as you're
Yeah.
saying, of this behavior. So to us, burnout is just rampant in my groups, in my therapy practice, in
Mm.
my community. Um, Health issues, autoimmune disorders, TMJ, insomnia, um, not being fully self-expressed. So there's like an existential loneliness that can come with these behaviors that where we keep going. I also two things that are also major, especially for careers, is that this behavior, especially if you are playing it out within your corporate life or your entrepreneurial life, we create a glass ceiling of our own making because there's just only so much bandwidth that we have.
Yeah.
And you just can't when if you are people pleasing and we become experts at it, we may not even recognize that's what we're doing, but it is. There's only so far that you can go because to really be a leader, to really be successful, to write something that hasn't been written, to do something that we have to ruffle feathers, we have to bust through, we have to go, hey man, as Cheryl Richardson would say, let me disappoint you because
Yes.
I'm going to disappoint you. And we
Mm.
have to be okay with that. So like we can't serve two bosses in that way, you know?
Mm.
There's also this phenomenon that I've seen and I called it living life light, like LITE. When you live so much in your head, when we have so much planning, when we do so much anticipatory stuff, when we're thinking of all the people and all the things and doing all the emotional labor in our homes and in our families and all the places, we're not present. So life is half as juicy, half as impactful, half as satisfying as it would be if we could figure out how to get into recovery and be where we are. Just be where we are and what we have to learn. And I can teach you and I will teach you and we'll talk about it. But we have to let the chips fall where they may when they're not our mother effing chips. And when you're in HFC, you think all the chips are your chips, but we don't
Right.
get it.
Right.
So
Right.
what is the cost to other people? As
Mhm.
you so beautifully said, Trace, their autonomy,
Yeah.
right? Also, we don't accept people where they are because we don't like it. In real life, people have a right to succeed or fail,
Mhm.
to thrive or flail. But you know who doesn't like any flailing?
Mm.
HFCs.
Right.
Do we don't like you to flail. No
Yeah.
flailing because we have a solution. You don't need to flail.
Yeah.
People need to flail and we
Yes.
need to fucking let them. We need to
Yes.
just get the fuck out of their way
Uh-huh.
and let them because here's the thing. People become projects. It's very dehumanizing.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to be a project. It's not nice. It does not feel loving.
Mm.
So this behavior is super detrimental to our relationships because your partner, your sister, your best friend does not want to feel managed by you.
Yes.
They
Yes.
don't.
Yes. In the same
So,
way, you don't want to feel managed by anyone, right?
oh,
Like, I
you
mean, we
better not.
very do unto others, but
Yeah,
so let's move into, I want to make one comment and let's talk about like recovery and like
sure.
how great, how amazing this is because this is such a gift. The other thing I want to
Yay.
emphasize in general is what this also does at the level of systems is you live a life of chronic dysregulation,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
and
Correct.
that's just really important that we acknowledge because all of the things that you then aspire for and deserve and work so hard towards become exponentially harder on top of all the things we talked about
Right.
because you're not in a state of creation, you're not in allowance, you're not in
Oh,
surrender, you're not in trust.
mm,
Universe and God can't work with you in the same way because you're just constantly just jacked up, just all the
yep.
time. And sister, you deserve such a more luscious inner environment than that.
Correct. Because the hypervigilance that you are describing, Trace, it's funny. You were talking about it and I was feeling it happening in my body. So the hypervigilance, you guys, if you don't know, most of you do know what it means. It just means you're on high alert all the time. And we really are in that state of dysregulation, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? This is what is happening. We were never meant to be in these states chronically. We were never meant. It was only if there was a saber-toothed tiger about to get us.
Hmm.
There's not now. And so what ends up happening is that if we don't make the distinction, if we don't on purpose create expansion, create surrender, raise our awareness, have better boundaries, right? You know, take Mel Robbins' idea of let them. They're going to do something you think is stupid, fucking let them. Just
Hmm.
leave them alone. Instead of
Hmm.
because here are the things that we can do. First and foremost, for yourself. Even though we're always willing to take one for the team or to help people out, I really want you to be discerning. You're going to ask yourself these two questions before you agree to anything for anybody. Number one, do I have the bandwidth to do this without becoming resentful?
Mm. Will you repeat that one more time? Hear
Sure.
this fully. Go ahead.
Before you agree to anything, the first question you ask yourself is, do I have the bandwidth to do this, to take this on without becoming resentful?
It immediately drops me into emotion
Yeah.
because the amount of no's that you're going to give as a result of earnestly asking yourself this question.
Yes. And then the second question is, do I even effing want to do it? Which we never, most of the time as HFCs, we almost never consider if my friend wants me to do it, if my husband wants me to do it, if my sister wants me to do it. And listen, we're in relationships with people. We live in a society. Of course, there will be things that you will consciously and with your eyes wide open agree to do, even though you don't want to. I see a lot of live classical music. I do not like classical music, but my husband really likes it and I really like him. So I go because it makes him very happy. And then we bring friends and we have dinner and I get dressed up. Okay, fine. You find ways. But what I'm saying is, if we are not consciously, with our eyes wide open, considering ourselves, because the real fix, The real thing to get into recovery for us is we must up our self-consideration. This is not the same. I mean, it's the umbrella that self-care and self-love goes under, but it's bigger than that. Because if you really ask yourself, hey, do I even friggin' want to do this thing? And the answer is no, and then you honor your no, that is actual self-love. That is true self-consideration. It's not how many people can we appease. It's not how many people can we save. It's not how many times a day can I put on my cape. It's can I do those things? Because you will always be who you are, the essence, right? Trace of who you are, of who I am. We are lovers. We are helpers. We're of service. This is literally who we are. That will not change. What does change, though, when you up your self-consideration is that you do those things with so much more legitimate equanimity and love. We do it freely, with abundance, not from this place of fear, not from this place of obligation, not from, and then because when we do shit from obligation, what ends up happening is the narrative gets switched up in the brain. I remember saying to my therapist, years ago, and I'd be like, I cannot believe Betty is so fucking entitled that she would blah, 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 ask me to do this after everything I've done for her. And she's like, hello, is Betty actually entitled? Or are you serving yourself up on a silver platter and then pissed because Betty is taking you up on your offer with your no boundaried self?
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that I think is what's actually happening. But she's like, and isn't it better if it's us?
Yeah.
Because then we can change it. So how do we get into surrender, right? You had said this before. And I think that if you had said to me at 25, how do you feel about surrender? I'd be like, never surrender. Never. That shit is a dirty word. No way.
Yeah.
In being 60, being an actual grown-up living a life, I realized that to get into recovery from being a high-functioning codependent meant I had to surrender to what is the truth about where someone is, right? What is the greatest flex when it comes to love is being in the foxhole with someone you love during a dark night of the soul and not trying to fucking fix them. Being observed, just compassionately, I'm here. I'm not making any stupid fucking suggestions that you're not going to take. The question that we have, instead of our auto advice giving, we ask, how can I best support you? When people come, and even though we've set ourselves up as HFCs, like, trust me, people are constantly coming to you and to me and to anyone else who's in HFC for advice because we're great. We're like an oracle. We actually have very good advice. We're very smart. But now, your first takeaway, besides asking yourself the two questions before you agree to anything, is when anybody comes to you with any problem, the first thing you're going to say is, all right, so tell me what you think you should do.
Yes. 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 That reminds me of my favorite mentoring question that I ask my clients is, if you were me, what question would you ask you?
I love it. It's great. Yep.
Right. And it is so important. And what we do when we do that is we help the other people in our lives recognize that they have needs, right? And then at the same time, we're healing this part of ourselves and becoming the version of ourselves that is no longer HFCing, right? Who really is a whole within ourselves to create interdependence.
Here's the thing, and this was maybe the hardest for me to recognize. I tell a story in the book. I don't know if we have time for the story, do we?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Where one of my sisters was in a bad relationship and she had kind of a history of her own addiction, alcohol addiction. And she was with this guy who was doing crack. They were living in a shack in the woods in upstate New York in the middle of the winter without running water and no heat, no electricity. So that's an HFC's nightmare. Like, there's no need to embellish that story because it's literally a fucking nightmare for anyone. If that were your sister, you'd be like, I can't even live my
I'd be
life.
like, I'm
I just
coming to
gotta
get you. This is ridiculous.
Of course, which I had done many times. Money, lawyers, books, just everything. And this was the beginning of my life where I had just fallen in love with my husband. I had just become a bonus mom to 3 teenage sons. Like I had just gone from being a talent agent to becoming a psychotherapist. Like my whole life was exploding, but I was obsessed with saving my sister. And I remember going to my therapist and I was crying my eyes out. And I was like, oh my God, Bev, what am I going to do? I've done everything. And she said, Terri, let me ask you something. What makes you think you know what your sister needs to learn and how she needs to learn it in this lifetime? And I very defensively said, well, I think we can both agree she doesn't need to do it in the woods with this piece of shit without running water. Like, I think we can agree, you know? And she
Yes.
said, Tara, I cannot agree because I don't know what your sister needs to learn and how she needs to learn it because I am not God. But do you know what's happening for you? This was the beginning of me understanding boundaries, HFCness, any of it. And I said, no, obviously, I don't know what the hell is happening for me. So please tell me. And she said, listen, you've worked really hard to create a harmonious life. You've had a lot of therapy. You're very happy. And your sister's dumpster fire is really messing with your peace. And you would really like to figure that out so that you could go back to your harmonious, happy life. And I was like, she is not lying. That is a fact. I really want this to be tied up in a neat bow so I could go back to my happy life. I said, I don't understand though. What are my choices? What can I do? She's my sister. I can't give up on her. I said, listen, you need boundaries, Tara. You do not need to talk to her about this abusive guy. So anyway, I talked to my sister, say, this is super painful for me. I love you, but I can't talk about this guy with you. If and when you ever want to get the fuck out of there, I will always be your person. We didn't talk for a while. It was painful, took a lot of strength. I was crying a lot still. And less than 9 months later, she called and said, are you still my person? And I was like, I'm putting on my sneakers. I was literally like diving in my car, picked her up, helped her appropriately because we had this little small like lake house in upstate New York that we then winterized and let her live there for 2 years and whatever. We could do it, you know? But what happened was instead of my sister's baby sister being the hero of her story, my sister, I'm going to cry, was the hero and is the hero of her story. And this was decades ago. She was never in another abusive relationship. She has been in recovery ever since. She went back to school. She became a CNA. Like what we rob people of when we insert ourselves as the solution to their problem is so much greater than you can imagine. And of course, that's not your intention. And of course, that wasn't my intention, but that is what happens. And so I learned so much that loving my sister was tolerating, surrendering to the fact that she wasn't ready to leave until she was. And even if something awful had happened, it was still her life. You know, my mother always had this, I think it's an Irma Bombeck quote on her refrigerator that said, I promise not to take credit for your accomplishments if you promise not to blame me for your failures. And I was like, that's a good deal.
Yes.
And that's what it means to be in recovery from being an HFC, is that we accept people even when it sucks and even when it's painful. We go, let them, and then let me take care of my nervous system. Let me do what I need to do. It's okay to disappoint people. You have to ask those two questions. Can I do this without becoming resentful? And if the answer is no, then you must allow yourself to disappoint others. Your relationships are not that fragile. You are not that fragile. And you deserve the expansion and the fullness and the lushness, Trace, that you were talking about before. That's the life that you deserve. But it can only be if you are not living codependently trying to control everyone else's chips.
Yes. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And beautiful listener, we are very aware of you. We are having this conversation in love of you. Remember to breathe. Know that it's so safe for you to create the safety your system needs to untether from your HFC-ness. You deserve that freedom. And my ask of you is to really write down, if you need to pause and back up, those questions that Terri gave. And I really love and want to compliment as we close this the word self-consideration is such
Mhm.
a light, loving, digestible, like acceptable as an easy to accept and allow
Yes.
phrasing that opens us up to the action of self-love, right? Self-love can be such a
Mhm.
like, what the fuck does that mean, right? But it's like, oh,
Exactly.
when you consider yourself, that is an active way that you
Right.
love yourself. So please lean in on self-consideration and write that somewhere that you can see it
Mhm.
so that you can make sure, because we know you so profoundly consider everyone
Mhm.
else, and it's time to start to consider yourself. So Terri, everything I intended and more, thank you for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I have a little gift
Yes,
for you guys
please.
because I know this was a lot. So this is it's just like an HFC toolkit to sort of get you started. You're going to go to terricole.com/HFC because that is easy. And on there, there'll also be a link if you want to buy the book.
Yeah.
I also wanted to share that I have a community as well that I love that is just there'll be a link on there for that if you want to check it out.
Yeah.
And I have a mastermind that starts March 1st. That is very small and super intimate. And really, at this point, it's the only way that people can really work with me in a more intimate way. There's usually 10 women, and
Mm,
we're together for 9 months, and we meet in person for 3-day beautiful luxury retreats. Like it's really, there's lots of things I love to do, but I gotta say, gathering, and you know, Trace,
oh,
because
it's my
we
favorite too.
we were together in LA, and it's
Yeah.
like it is my heart's work. And being a therapist for so many years, it's both, right? It's for
Mm,
entrepreneurial women because I've done all the things of best-selling books and podcasts for 10 years and all the silos of
mm,
what you need. But then as a psychotherapist, I feel like no matter what level we're at, and this is why you have your school and why you do what
yeah.
you do,
Yeah.
that at every level of our evolution, there are other limiting beliefs that get in the way. Like, who am I to make $1 million? Who am I to be on Kelly and Mark? Who am I to,
Yes.
and the psychological consideration. So anyway, I really do feel like the mastermind itself is very unique
Yeah.
in that it covers both of those things and really my favorite thing to do. And then I have guests like you come in as well to
Yeah.
share your gifts with the mastermind.
Yes. Thank you. It's beautiful. And I agree. There is nothing more loving and enjoyable than in-person gathering
Oh,
togetherness, right?
the
It's
best,
magical. It's
the
magical.
best.
Oh, so good. Thank you. Listener, we're going to have every single link that you heard in the show notes. And Terri, where can they hang with you on social? Where do you like to play the most?
On Instagram is
Okay.
really where I hang out the most. And I really am very active on Instagram. And I gotta say, I have a YouTube channel that has 650 free videos. So I cannot tell you how many people around the world are like, I had no money to actually go to therapy, but I literally watched every one of your videos and my life is thriving. So if you're anything you're interested in, I guarantee you there is something free on my YouTube channel that will hopefully help you.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time and your love. I'm so grateful. And beautiful listener, put yourself first. It's safe. And until next time, remember there's always more love.